Kyle here from All Media Reviews, here to do the Modern Progressive Art Rock Calendar 2008. And I think it's just going to be part one because it's going to be long. And of course, I got to talk about a few things that I realized I didn't include in previous videos, which was just a few weeks ago, like a month ago, I last did these. So, all right. So just getting through these, talking about stuff. One I didn't include was it wasn't the first or second album. They had a few other records were sort of like bootlegs. Um, but Humphreys McGee's first sort of semi-proper album, Local Band Does Okay, came out on June 21st, 2002, the same day as the December's debut album, Castaways and Cutouts. So I honestly have never really spent time with this record. I probably should though. I don't think it really compares as much to the records that followed it, but yeah, something to note. Humphreys McGee, Local Band Does Okay. People that knew them, the jam band scene in Chicago probably knew about it, but that was June 21st, 2002. So then, moving up to a couple more years, stuff I missed. Here's one. Yeah, this is the next one. It's a band called Facing New York, and now I'll fully admit that this is a case of a band that I thought I was gonna love. Their debut album, self-titled album, came out on August 30th, 2005, a week after like those three albums that came out. The Greg Harrigan's Minus the Bear, Menos Also, and Never Ending White Lights, Act One, and Twin Cinema. So it was like four albums the week after, but nothing that I could tell came out on August 30th. They're not from New York. I think they're from the Bay Area actually, but I know a lot of people among like the Dredge community and some of the other prog communities that love this band, and they actually like the one after it more. And I remember thinking I was gonna love this after I was kind of finding band after band when I found this. I bought this, was it December of 2005 maybe? Yeah. I think it was on Shane's The Spectre 1982. That was the other reason why. I think he was on this list. I could be wrong, but Styrofoam Walls is the go-to I remember among this record. But I mean, come from the Mean Streets, where they wrote, produced, and mixed with Scott Lamas. Their self-titled full-length. The result is 10 tracks of innovative indie prog rock, which they recorded live to duplicate the energy of their live show. Their songs are a testament to the last year of their lives, in last year of their lives over the last year. Intricating, constructed with lush guitar parts, punchy rhythm section, and thick vocal melodies. Recommended if you like Dismemberment Plan, Cave In, who I've never been able to get into that much. I like a few of their songs, just like Incubus, except for that soundtrack for the Halo 3 soundtrack. I like a few other Incubus songs, and the Mars Volta. So, yeah, I mean, if I listen to this now, maybe I feel like I thought that the production was one of the things that hurt this album, and the singer didn't have a lot of punch to his voice. I felt the same way about Minus the Bear. I still kind of do to a small degree, but I felt like on Planet of Ice, the one from 2007. But yeah, Facing New York, at least notable because they had a little bit of a following among some of these other bands' fan bases, at least. That was on August 30th, 2005. Then on okay, so this is a key one. Did I must have missed it because I didn't put a dash on. September, just July 12th, 2005 was not the first EP, but I totally forgot about this band when I was making these lists, these calendars, like less than a year ago. British Columbia's own Wolf Parade. Their self-titled EP, which I haven't listened to this in a long time, but they put out this. They put out like an EP or two before this. Um, Vocals are kind of quirky, but the way they use piano, it gets kind of proggy. But this particular EP, I gave it like 3.5 stars on Rate Your Music when I got into this. 2009 is when I bought it, but that was on July 12th, the same day as the Ebb and Flow put out Time to Echolocate, their last album, their first album rather. And Ebb and Flow was from California too, so maybe they knew. I'm thinking of maybe they knew Facing New York. I wouldn't be surprised, but although California's a big state, I'm not sure what area. So then Wolf Parade later that in the early fall on September 27th put out, by some people's take, their best record, their debut album, Apologies to the Queen Mary. And I mean it's the only bolded Wolf Parade record. It's not my favorite. I like some of it. I mean, it kind of reminds me of Foals, where they're the second Foals album I like. I'm gonna be talking about that at some point. Foals in this series, of course, including this video. But I feel like and like Block Party, the second this was not as good as what they would follow it with, but I still like a lot of it. Um, there's stuff like Modern World. We built another world. Again, I mean, it's better than the EP. I remember liking it. I remember like I can sort of understand why. Kind of again, Block Party, like Silent Alarm. I can understand why people love that record. It's just they went even more proggy with the next record. But this came out on September 27th, 2005. Apologies to Queen Mary, a classic in indie rock history, you could say. But um, so then we would okay then there okay so then in 2006, the band My Latest Novel, Scotland's own, put out their debut album Wolves, which much like Wolf Parade or they do better things after this. They only put out one other record, unfortunately. But I liked it. I thought it was a little more folky, although they did kind of remind me of Anothello. They're compared to Anothello. I remember when I heard about it, I read about it. But My Latest Novel on March 7th, 2006. The same day the debut album from Mason Proper came out. So they both put out debut albums that year. There's a Moth in Your Chest, but came out March 7th, 2006. My Latest Novel's debut album Wolves. And then Humphreys McGee again, since I missed this one, which is a better record. The one album that followed Anchor Drops in 2005. 2004 maybe? 2004 was one. Safety in Numbers, which came out on March 31st, 2006. The first album that came out after being a fan, and I liked it. I didn't like it as much as Anchor Drops, but I got to go back to it. I remember thinking a lot of it was good, but some of it dragged on a little bit. But probably better than Local Band Does Okay, and some of the other Humphreys McGee's records in the last 15 years, although some of them have been good too. So Safety in Numbers came out on March 31st, 2006. So you had both My Latest Novel, Wolves, and that I missed from the 2006 list. And so Small League Sing Ship's debut album came out. I missed on February 13th, 2007. Until the world is happy, wake up, you sleepyhead son. They like to have long titles. My favorite of theirs is a pretty long title, Face Yourself in Rouge Sandals. And I revisited this back at the end of 2023 when I did that series on them, and it's pretty good, but it does have more like post-hardcore elements to it. But I'd still put it, and especially what they would do later with their math rock. I mean, there's a lot of math rock on this album, but their sounds are fine. They just sound younger. So, but they would, yeah. I mean, I happen to love this band. I think they're a very important band, at least from my perception of this sort of sub genre, especially the last decade and change. But so their debut album, which is a decent record, again, stylistically, it's like almost like At the Drive-In some way. I mean, it's not quite like that, but in that comparison, compare At the Drive-In to Mars Volta. This came out on February 13th, 2007. Small League Sing Ships, Until the World is Happy, Wake Up, semicolon, Wake Up, You Sleepyhead, Son. And then, I think, is there one more that I'm missing? I thought I added it, but I think this is 2006. Yeah, oh no, it was 2007. September 21st, 2007. See, the debut album from German progressive post-metal, whatever, Long Distance Calling, their album Satellite Bay, which, from my memory, this sounds a lot more like traditional post-rock, or, yeah, like ISIS or, who's the other band? ISIS or the band my friend Rob was into. But yeah, I mean, they would go on to do other things I loved better, especially the one after this from 2009. But an original stereo recorded by Long Distance Calling. But yeah, I mean, it's again a notable, just like Small League Steam Ships, a notable release. I mean, yeah, it's like Heavy Explosion in the Sky, or like Russian Circles. You could say in some ways, but I think they've separated themselves from Russian Circles, and I don't really pay attention to Russian Circles nearly as much as I did in the early days. And I of course, I had Enter from them in 2006's list. So I think that's it. I could finally move on after 10 minutes plus here onto 2008. It's a massive year for me. It's like over time it's become a favorite year. So let's get going on it. So January 22nd saw it was two albums. One of them I'm not that familiar with, but it has to go on the list. It's for like the subgenre sake. But one of them is Black Mountains in the Future. I think this is the third album from them, and I've not spent time with their previous two records, and the records since I've not liked as much. But this particular record, as a Pure Reason Revolution fan, I talked about Fields with the period, another band that kind of reminded me a little bit of Pure Reason Revolution, but the sort of indie pitchfork audience actually caught on to them. It has three or four like tracks. It's not identical to Pure Reason Revolution, but it's using heavy riffs, a male-female vocal dynamic, drawing on psychedelic music, stuff from the 70s, 60s, 70s, that era especially. But also Black Sabbath. Track like Tyrants and then Bright Lights. I think I talked about this in a different video I can't remember when, but anyway, Stormy High is good. I mean, the whole record's pretty good. But the highs of those, like Bright Lights is like, it's like a 12-minute epic. They're doing like the bright light brights, and I always think of Light Bright the game from kids, but Tyrants, that song has a just super punchy riff. But yeah, Black Mountains in the Future. I'm pretty sure this is their third record. They're from Canada, I know. Came out on just January 22nd, 2008. Then the same day, MGMT's, again, I'm not much of a fan, although, was it Fiacre covered one of their songs? Their album Oracular Spectacular, which someday I might get more into. In the sort of history of indietronica per se, the Apes and Androids, the style, this album came out, ironically, right around the same time, and it was way more commercially successful. MGMT's Oracular Spectacular. I think they were a duo, just like many. They're like a bunch of duos from either somewhere in London, the UK, or one of the boroughs in New York, like Apes and Androids. But anyway, Oracular Spectacular also came on January 22nd, 2008. So then the week after that sees the new album with the slightly new look, new lineup, sort of in a way. The Mars Volta album, The Bedlam in Goliath. So gone is John Theodore from Texture from 2006, and steps in Thomas Pridgeon. Said a lot about this record. When it came out, I was really excited for it. Is this? Yeah. It's like a double disc I like a making of. And the songwriting is pretty good. I don't think it's as quite as on par or top notch, but it's more from concrete songs. A lot of the songs aren't that long. It's whatever it is, like 12 tracks. Fortunately, it's very, very, very compressed sounding and very loud. And so more than half the songs, the drums, the cymbals clip awful. It's like an awful mixing of cymbals. It's a loudness war, a victim of loudness wars. I've always said for a long time, this could be a fantastic record if it was remixed. Maybe it will someday, but I mean, songs like Waximulacra, that one won won a Grammy, I believe. Goliath, what is it? Ouroboros, I believe. Yeah, I mean, I listened to it for about 2 weeks, and then I just concluded, God, I cannot stand the way the cymbals sound. So, and I know like Omar in that documentary kind of doesn't consider it full canon of the Mars Volta. All the records after this aren't considered full canon until except the new one that came out a couple of years ago. So that came out on January 29th, 2008. So then the big elephant in the room a couple weeks later sees the release of the only album they ever put out as under this name, Blood Moon from Apes and Androids. Admittedly, though, when this was released, of course, I did not know about it. I found it on a blog. Probably, it might have been a week before it, but I did not really get a chance to listen to it in full until after this February 11th, 2008 release date of Blood Moon. So, but I've kind of, run the gamut and said a million things about it, even though people know it still, although some people on the Image and Word Discord know it because I chose this as my album of the decade. Over Shame of the True because we couldn't stream that, etc. But it's the definitive record in indietronica for me, very progressive indietronica, progressive electronic rock, and it's just all the work I love, but it's I can't say much more. It's fantastic, and it's notable because in February 11th, 2008, I would like go back in time and just relive that experience again. Like, it had humor, but I mean, it was so big in terms of electronics and layers, and so many catchy tracks on it, from Radio to I Don't Understand You to Golden Prize to Make Forever Last Forever to Johnny and Sarah to the epic sort of not semi-closing track Riverside. Just it's fantastic. Apes and Androids Blood Moon on February 11, 2008. So then on this list, I don't have anything. So I would have been taking it if I knew that at that point. It was around that time I started taking Apes and Androids, but March 24th, 2008 is the next thing I've got, and I haven't even opened this record, but it's I have it on CD too. Foals' debut album, Antidotes, which is highly math rock. And I know this is coming on the heels of the release of the Battles debut album from the year before. So math rock was kind of getting popular. This got a lot of exposure, especially again the Pitchfork crowd, the indie rock crowd. And I liked it, but I didn't like. I felt like it was kind of homogenous. It was very kind of repetitive. The songs, the guitar texture sounded similar, but this is one of those massive growers, and after seeing them live, especially, Cassius, French Open, Electric Bloom, Two Steps Twice. That's a live staple banger. The energy is just off the charts. I like Swimming. I love this album. It's even though it's kind of raw sounding. I mean, it's a debut album, but and they do things I liked even more a little bit. It's a really just. I mean, I like this way more than the Block Party debut, or you could say the Wolf Parade debut. But Foals' Antidotes on March 24th, 2008 was released. So 6 days later, over in Japan, the Japanese band, and I didn't find out until way late in the year in 2008, but Kacica puts out their final album. This is recording. I just saw my screen go blank. Mosaic, definitive album from Kacica. Female-led vocals, kind of like Bjork in a way, but I don't have Bjork on any of these lists at this point, but math rock, dream pop, female singer, Japanese singers, female Japanese singer kind of singing in English with a bit of a lisp, but it doesn't really matter. The guitar work is just fantastically composed. The little dynamics, the little, soft parts, kind of busy parts, very beautiful, kind of mesmerizing, dreamy parts. There's the secret. I got this CD on CD Baby, so I didn't have to pay an arm and a leg for it, thankfully. But Mosaic from Kacica, the final album at this point from Kacica, came out on initially, I don't know if it may have been in Japan before this, but the date I've got is March 30th, 2008. So a couple days later, sees Yes, another fantastic album, and it's the second album from them, not a debut, but Bryan Scary and the Shredding Tears, Flight of the Knife. A big step up from the self-titled debut. As much as I like parts of that record, the cabaret element, this one is more proggy, even more ELO influence in a good way. It has the track, the Purple Rocket. That sounds like Elton John meets like ELO meets, I don't know, the odd time. It's like in 7 or like 11 at one point. But it's very kind of a tour de force from it's a Queen studio production style. But I've only gotten to Bryan Scary the last couple of years, and this isn't my favorite album. The one that he do next, it's actually under his name, I think. I like a little more, but sometimes I thought this record is just, it's a big concept album too. But if you've never heard Bryan Scary, you're sleeping on him if you like any of this kind of stuff. If you like piano-driven, proggy, rock, ELO kind of inspired. So that was on April 1st, on April Fool's Day in 2008. So a week later, the first album from this band, Mills on, that I really got into. I knew about the name, but I finally decided I gave them a shot. And Cloud Cult's Feel Good Ghosts, Tea Party through Tornadoes, yeah. It has maybe their most successful pop song, at least locally. Everybody Here Is a Cloud. It's a little corny, but I still like it. I mean, it has, and I think this was a continuation from the Rule of Seven, whatever it's called, the previous record from 2007. Was it 2007? 2005 maybe. I remember the previous record. Yeah, it's got that track that Love You Will, that's super sad. He uses the vocal effects, but Journey of the Featherless is just melancholy but big dynamically from a layered standpoint. The cello, the piano arrangement, Craig's vocals, he sounds better. He's at this point he started to really sound better from album to album. So this is the first Cloud Cult album I loved, but they do other things I love more, but I still always love this record. No one said it would be easy. That one's an earworm. That's just like a life lesson. You gotta, things that life isn't easy. You gotta, kind of take everything stride and get through it. So that came out on April 8th, 2008. So April 15th, 2008, a massive album that I think I'd heard early for various reasons. I think I maybe found a promo, but in fact, this is a promo. The Ars album that took, in effect, 6 years to release. Um, Mercy, Dancing for the Death of an Imaginary Enemy. Um, Static is the guitarist, and his sort of inner the Edge, kind of the U2 influence is big on this. It was produced by Rick Rubin. It got nominated for a Grammy even. Worst Things Beautiful. The Worst Things Beautiful is, to push come to shove, probably still my favorite R song. It's Jimmy kind of, even though it sounds a lot like Bono, he's just soaring. But the Mercy, the title track, Murder, the trumpet on that, or is it trombone? I think it's trumpet, but it's very kind of, it's not industrial, but it's very riffy and energetic. It's big and very emotional. Willing's a very catchy, punchy song. Saint might have been about Jeff Buckley. Every song, this is a 5-star record. Black, dark lyrically. Ran away to rule ran away to rule the world, to tell the world rather. Featured cello. Jimmy, and the production's pristine. It sounds better than the first two Ars albums by a lot. You can tell that they spent 6 years on it. It was like, we waited year after year for this damn thing. I was only a fan in 2005, and it seemed like forever, but that's why it was a really big dig when it came out, and it's still held up. That was on April 15th, 2008. So skipping ahead to May 2008. I had this in the wrong order. Yeah, okay. I had them in the wrong order. This is a band that actually has now a connection with Falling Up. I didn't realize, or Jesse Robordi, now the Chilling Alpine Adventure. The Myriad, with Arrows with Poise. It's the debut album. This band, I think they're probably from Portland or somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. And I like this album. The weird thing is about when I first heard it, there was one track on here that absolutely floored me. I think it's the last track, the piano part, Stuck in a Glass Elevator. Then I went back to that. I'd written that on Rate Your Music on my review. Went back to that about 2 years ago, and I was like, yeah, this is one of the greatest tracks ever written. The ending with the piano, it's so just like big and majestic and melancholy at the same time. But yeah, I mean, it's a decent record. I probably should go back and listen to some more of the Myriad records, but this particular record, the debut album, came out on May 13th, 2008. So then on May 19th, 2008, we have a couple albums. One being, I think I talked about the previous record, but probably the definitive, the best record, my favorite record, if I'm going to one, from the band The Chap. British, they're sort of answer to Apes and Androids. They're indietronica, although they sound a little bit like that band Hot Chip at points. Deeper vocals at points, kind of, a baritone voice almost. But this is the album, I believe, with Proper Rock. Proper Rock's the sort of pop banger on this. But they use electronics. They're very quirky. Don't expect like sort of the most progressive thing ever, but they're diverse enough to, again, it's like Apes and Androids or some of these other bands we'll be talking about. Indietronica, 2008 was probably the biggest year, for my perception, for Indietronica. Even beyond Blood Moon from Apes and Androids. Anyway, Mega Breakfast from The Chap, England's own, UK's own, came out on May 19th, 2008. So the same day, someone I knew through the message boards, Nicholas Chappell from France, signed to the same label as Gojira when Gojira had come up only a year or two before. And Steven Wilson kind of touted this album. Demien's album, Building an Empire. This is an album that reminds you kind of not exactly like Porcupine Tree, but a little bit like Porcupine Tree, or he has an influence from like Incubus to but it is progressive in a lot of like longer tracks, like The Perfect Symmetry. I believe it's Temple's the one with the Martin Luther King samples. It's really kind of melancholy and sad. Shine, Sapphire. This was a massive deal I had a personal bias because I knew him. A lot of people knew him, but it was well received. Unfortunately, Demien's, he'd put out some demos I liked even more under a different name. But Building an Empire is the one album I still like from them. The stuff that have come out since I've just struggled with, but Yeah, and it's probably the most proggy Demian's album. But Villain Empire came out on May 19th, 2008. I remember, I think I saw that at a store, which is here. It's like one of my friend's albums in the store, like a big like Best Buy or something like that. So, what did I do with that? Oh, it's at the back here. So next, the day after, saw the last album from King's X for a long time. XV, it'd been 3 years since Tapehead, Ogre Tones, and I found like I liked some of Ogre Tones. A lot of people liked it more. This an improvement from Ogre Tones. It's got one of their best songs, in Go Tell Somebody. Just the riff and the guitar solo and just kind of the message, the energy on that song. But I revisited this a couple years ago when I was going through the King's X. I did the King's X series, and albums tracks like Pray, Repeating Myself, Julie, All Right is energetic, Stuck, Move. I mean, it's not a perfect record, but I remember I felt like this was a breath of fresh air. Even though reading the biography, this was a hassle to make, and the band were not on the best of terms. Like at the end of it, that's kind of why they didn't make an album after this. I think the end of it was finished just with Doug and some of the people from like Metal Blade or Inside Out working with him. I don't know. They didn't break up, obviously, and they still did live gigs, but the making of this album was not an easy task, but I think it turned out really good. I'd love to get this album on vinyl. It probably will come on vinyl at some point soon. So that came out on May 20th, 2008. So fast forward to June. See, it's the debut EP from a great post-rock band from Down Under, very jazzy. Tangled Thoughts of Leaving, Tiny Fragments. It's actually available on Discogs. Today's the day to all that money goes to the LA fires, but it's an arm and leg, and I don't like import. You have to buy it from Australia. But someday this is the best thing I think that Tangled Thoughts of Leaving ever did. Sadly, they did a lot of other things. They got obsessed with noise rock, but they'll be included in a couple more these calendars. But it was June 13th, 2008. Tiny Fragments. The piano parts are just great, totally like mesmerizing and dreamy. So that was June 13th, 2008. So then on June 17th, 2008, talking about Wolf Parade earlier. And I wasn't a Wolf Parade fan at this time, but this got a little hyped up, and I'd heard of them, and I'd seen them written up in alternative press. At Mount Zoomer, their proggy masterpiece, their best record by far for me. I mean, again, I liked Apologies for Queen Mary from 2005, and I talked about, I forgot, but this album features especially two massive bangers. One being California Dreamer. I believe it's California Dreamer, yes. But the other is Kissing the Beehive. Kissing the Beehive is one of the greatest songs of the 21st century. Just the composition is like 10 minutes. It's got these dynamics, the keyboard parts. So Spencer Krug, I think his name is, his vocal inflections, the kind of the way, fire in the hole, fire. And it's got that hook, that it's so like addictive and earwormy. Yeah, At Mount Zoomer, fantastic album. And this kind of came out and I was like, wow, how is this band this good? One of those questions. They're from British Columbia. I don't know if they ever did a gig with Ben Sinister, but anyway, that was on June 17, 2008. And I at least can say I did listen to it around that time. So then, let's see, a couple days later, yes, a week later, the next week, the last album for many years from Italy's Clip 1918, Just in Case We Never Meet Again, soundtrack for this cassette generation. It was around this time I was getting super nostalgic for like wanting to go back in time and like being a kid of the 80s and cassette. So this kind of, the title kind of hit me. Unfortunately, I know people that love this record. They think it's their best work. I've only liked it, Ghost of a Tape Listener. I felt like, because I love Doppelganger, the previous record from 2005, so much, I was super hyped for this record. And it's just been decent. Skygazer, I felt like it was kind of vanilla. It was like, now I'll say this, I like this a lot more than the record that followed it, which was many years later. But we're still expecting a new record from them, hopefully soon, no more. But anyway, this came out on June 17th, June 24th, rather, 2008. Just in Case We'll Never Meet Again, from Clint 1918. Anyway, let's see here, June 24th. So I'll keep going here. Let me just go down to part 2.